It's always a pleasure having you on Africa 24 for your program Décryptage. Mr. Robin Van Puyenbroeck, Executive Director of Business Development at the World Trade Centers Association, is our guest for today. He will be talking to us on how important it is for young entrepreneurs in Africa to find the right business partners. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Robin. Afreximbank, on the sidelines of its annual meetings 2023, celebrated 30 years of existence. What do you think about the bank's progress and efforts towards transforming Africa's trade and creating more opportunities for Africans?
Well, I think it's been a phenomenal story, right? It's been a phenomenal growth story. We heard this morning from Professor Rama that the bank grew from about 12 million portfolio to 3 billion and growing from there. So that is a tremendous growth scenario, and I think the bank has very well deployed its capital in exactly the type of projects that it was made to do. And I think the synergy now with the African Continental Free Trade Area, with its mandate, its mission to stimulate, to promote, to develop that inter-Africa trade, I think is actually exactly where the Afreximbank is succeeding today. And it's just, I think, the beginning of a much longer story.
How do you view the role of development financial institutions in building prosperity for Africans?
Well, I think I would put it in a much bigger context, that the role of the development banks is not so much to create themselves, it's to provide access to finance for the private sector, for business, on the one hand, and on the other hand, to governments, to public entities, with public-private partnerships to create that critical physical infrastructure that's needed to develop economies.
At the World Trade Centers Association, you aim to ease the setup of business opportunities for small and medium-sized enterprises. How important is it for young entrepreneurs in Africa today to find the right business partners, and what are the tools available for them?
That is a very good question that could keep me all day answering. But so the World Trade Centers Association, we are an international trade association with a mandate to promote, to stimulate, to develop international trade and development. So we have about 320 World Trade Centers all around the world, of which 14 are now in Africa and growing fast. And so it's basically we're an interconnector, if you like, of business networks. That if you have a World Trade Center, for example, here in Accra, would like to do business in Brazil, in India, in the Netherlands, they just contact the World Trade Center in those locations and sort of, try to find business partners. So as part of that critical infrastructure, it was mentioned this morning, the need $100 billion a year in infrastructure for roads, for rail, for interconnectors, that there's also an intangible piece of infrastructure, which is exactly the creation of those business networks. Because if companies cannot find other companies, other entrepreneurs to work with, to do business with, then that inter-Africa trade can also not develop. And to your question about SMEs, our constituents are by far and most small and medium enterprises. And if you look at Africa, about 90% of businesses are small enterprises. And only 10% make it to medium size, and I believe only 1% ever makes it to a larger company. And a lot of it has to do with the absence of an institutional regulatory infrastructure, which the African Continental Free Trade Area is now providing. But another key component here of what prohibits this growth is the difficulty to get access to proper financing. And that is exactly then where Afreximbank again comes in as well.
Most entrepreneurs' ventures tend to fail in the first 3 years due to lack of access to finance. What are the levers to enable entrepreneurs in Africa get the funds that will help them to get their business going?
Well, it's again, you said it, it's access to finance. So I think there is an absolute piece of work to do on the commercial lending market, that companies need access to finance to build an inventory or to explore new markets. The access to finance is just part of the story, but I think this is something that the Afreximbank has very well understood. But this is also something that we are doing with the WTCA. For example, we had our own annual meeting in Accra 6 weeks ago, which is kind of amazing. And we brought entrepreneurs and the leaders of World Trade Centers from all around the world, hundreds of them, all to Ghana, to Accra, to discover the African market. And because there's a huge issue also about the perception of doing business in Africa as a continent and the risk perception. So, and I make that circle, that angle to come back to your question about access to finance and companies failing. It's also important for companies to find a good, solid partners abroad, because financing can in part also come from partners abroad, meaning could be within Africa, could be from outside of the African continent, but doesn't necessarily only have to come from financing institutions.
Infrastructure development in Africa is key to a prosperous future and creating an environment which will benefit young entrepreneurs. How can we secure a stable infrastructure market at the continental scale? Who are the key actors in this process?
You mean for physical infrastructure? Well, these are massive infrastructure projects, right? It needs infrastructure finance. So it's a matter of building roads. There's plenty of examples where a bridge is built and all of a sudden the trip from one place to another becomes a matter of 4 hours instead of 15 days. So it's really something critical where the government is an essential partner in making it happen, because it's a very long-term type of investment, these infrastructure finance deals. But the best ones are always in public-private partnership. And the capitalization of that is now being funded. There's multiple organizations within Africa that do that, but again, a Fraxim Bank as well. So it's a matter of priorities. But physical infrastructure is not just roads, it's also, for example, energy interconnectors. Because when we talk about growth on the continent, and you know the numbers, the demographics don't lie. You see massive growth of population, growth of urbanization. The focus we heard this morning and yesterday from Secretary General Mini as well on a focus on industrialization. That will take an enormous need for energy, of resources. And you have certain countries like Kenya, like Ethiopia, that are to an extent already self-sufficient if it comes to renewable energies, geothermal, hydro. But how can they become net exporters? So it needs interconnectors. So there's different types of infrastructure that is needed to keep feeding and powering that growth.
Mr. Robin Van Puyenbroeck, Executive Director of Business Development at the World Trade Centers Association. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And that puts an end to this program. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for more programs on Africa 24.